All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're doing something pretty fascinating. We're going to start with a 30,000-foot view of global power politics, and then we're going to zoom straight down to the deeply human, unfiltered realities happening on the streets of Tehran. We are looking at exactly how these massive, abstract geopolitical theories actually play out in the daily lives, the grief, and the absolute defiance of everyday people. So, to kick things off, we've got to ask a deceptively simple question. Who runs the world? Now, it sounds like a philosophical riddle, right? It's actually from political scientist Ian Bremmer. But to truly understand the ongoing tensions and the conflicts surrounding Iran, we first have to answer this, because the answer has completely shapeshifted over our lifetimes. You see, our global order has dramatically changed. If you go back over 45 years, we lived in a pretty straightforward bipolar world. The US called the shots on one side of the globe, and the Soviets set the rules on the other. Then, less than 45 years ago, the Soviets collapsed. That left the US as the sole, undisputed global superpower in a unipolar world. But over the past 15 years, well, we've entered what Bremer calls a complicated world. The old rules are fragmenting everywhere, and traditional superpowers are finding it way harder to just dictate the terms. Which brings us to part one, the strategy of asymmetric warfare, and how we actually define this conflict. So here's the big question. In this complicated new era, how on earth does a smaller nation stand up to a former unipolar giant? When you don't have the same military budget or the same firepower, how do you even the playing field? Well, you change the rules entirely. You use asymmetric warfare. This is a military strategy that completely bypasses traditional strength. It was famously pioneered in Iran by Moshtaba Hashemi, a guy often referred to locally as the Che Guevara of Iran. And this doctrine doesn't rely on matching missile for missile. Instead, it relies on an absolute, unwavering willingness to endure sacrifice. It's all about neutralizing a superpower's threats because that traditional fear of death or destruction, it's just been completely removed from the equation. Moving on to part two, the culture of martyrdom or shahadat on the ground. To really grasp how this abstract military theory becomes a living, breathing cultural reality, just look at this number, 1,300. That's the acreage of the Behesht Zahra cemetery in Tehran. It is absolutely massive. And ground reports show that on Fridays, the space isn't just filled with grieving families. Citizens from all over the city gather here. They literally bring their children to the graves of top commanders and fallen soldiers, not just to mourn, but to actively teach them the history and the honor of defending their nation. It is essentially a living classroom for teaching shahadat, or martyrdom. And when locals are asked about how they'll face threats from global superpowers, the response is just uncompromising. They say, "We're not afraid of being martyred, it is our wish." I mean, think about the strategic implications of that mindset for a second. As the reporting points out, how do you threaten a populace that actively embraces the ultimate sacrifice? Traditional deterrence just breaks down entirely. That leads right into part three, the human cost, the real lives behind the geopolitical chess match. Because, behind all these grand strategies and geopolitical maneuvers are everyday families. And that brings us to the number 87. That is how many sailors lost their lives when an Iranian ship was sunk by an American torpedo off the coast of Sri Lanka. And the tragic context here, according to the source material, is that this was an unarmed ship. It was just returning from a friendly international fleet review in India. One of those 87 sailors was a man named Mohammad Vaziri, whose body was repatriated and laid to rest in Tehran. Now, the sources note a really deep, lingering anger here. While the U.S. designated the sinking as a military win, the people visiting Vaziri's grave view it entirely differently. To them, the death of the sailor on a friendly visit is a stark, very painful reminder of foreign adventurism and aggression in their region. But the human cost doesn't stop at the military. 168. That's the devastating number of lives, innocent children, claimed in the horrific attack on the Minov school on the very first day of the war. And the grief from that day, it's still incredibly palpable. At Taiji Square, mothers are literally rallying nightly. They gather with photos of their little girls, just absolutely refusing to let the world stay silent. The reports describe how these mothers spend International Mother's Day, not celebrating, but in mourning. Yet they find incredible strength in their unity. They know they can't go to a physical battlefield, so they treat Taiji Square as their battleground, vowing to stand firm and never, ever forget the children they sent to school who never came back. Now let's look at part four. A new generation resists, focusing on Gen Z and the narrative war. Because despite all that profound trauma, Iran's younger demographic, their Gen Z, is pushing back with some serious defiance. Their message to the world is explicitly, You're messing with the wrong nation. They are incredibly tuned into global history, stating very clearly that they're standing up to global imperialism to prevent their country from becoming the next Libya, Syria, or Venezuela. For them, this resistance is an absolute necessity for survival. And you can really see the massive geopolitical disconnect here. On paper, Washington's intended effect of maximum pressure was to prompt regime change and instill fear. But the reported reality on the ground? It's basically the exact opposite. The pressure has unified the populace, it's deeply entrenched that celebration of martyrdom we talked about, and it sparked a massive wave of online resistance. In fact, according to the on-the-ground reporting, locals view former U.S. President Trump's maximum pressure tactics as a fatal miscalculation. One local put it bluntly, saying he actually dug his grave. To the youth, those aggressive foreign policies merely strengthened Iranian resolve and completely undermined any superpower leverage in the country. So what you should really take away from this is how the nature of the conflict has evolved. We're not just talking about a physical battle anymore. It's a highly sophisticated digital one. These young people are incredibly educated, like the young woman interviewed who holds a master's degree in aeronautics. They're waging a viral war using humor, art, and literally Lego stop-motion videos to mock imperialism and take control of their own global narrative. Ultimately, for the people on the ground, especially the youth, this isn't just some localized fight for Iran. They really see themselves as drawing a hard line in the sand for the rest of the world. They view their resistance as the final step in putting a permanent stop to superpower adventurism so that no other nation in the region ever has to face what they've faced. So, bringing it all back from the micro-reality of the streets to the macro view of global politics, I want to leave you with this final, crucial thought. If asymmetric warfare completely neutralizes standard military threats, if a highly educated generation uses the internet to effortlessly bypass global narratives, and if the threat of death is actively welcomed rather than feared, then in this complicated new era, who really runs the world? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.